I call this February 28, 2023 regular meeting of the Burlington Board of Health to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Ed Weiner, Chairman of the Burlington Board of Health, and with me tonight are board members. First, my Vice Chair, Mr. David McSweeney, Member Andrea Sheehan, Gail Demore, and Mary Beth Welch. Also tonight is our Director of Public Health, Susan Luminello, Environmental Engineer, Christine Mathis, and our Recording Secretary, Eric Bergeron. Thank you all for coming. Please note that we are live on and will be taped by BCAT and available for appropriate comments and questions through this video technology. And thank you for BCAT for what you do for this community, keeping us all aware and so well informed. Thank you, BCAT. Now, approval of minutes first. We've got a bunch of them. We have first regular minutes, December 13th and January 10th. We'll take those first. So,
Motion to approve.
Second.
for December 13th, I have a motion.
We got too many, let's go.
Motion
Thank you, Mr.
and second. Any comments, deletions, additions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0 opposed. Okay. Now, January 10th, 2023 regular minutes. Do I have a motion?
To approve, so moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We have 5-0-1, one abstention.
4-0.
4-0-1, thank you. We have 3 subcommittee minutes. I'll go through them what they are. January 17th was the Hazardous Material Storage Subcommittee minutes. January 18th was supervisory nurse interviews, and February 6, 2023 were supervisory nurse interviews. Everybody can vote on these. First, January 17th, hazardous material storage.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second.
Second.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0. January 18th, the supervisory nurse interview. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0. And last, February 6, 2023, supervisory nurse interview.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0-0. Next is citizens' time. Is there anyone who is not part of our agenda who would like to speak to the board? Everybody here is on the agenda. Do we have anybody online, Ms. Lumino?
We do have some people online, but I don't know if they're here for citizens' time.
Is there anybody online who'd like to speak to the board? I'm hearing nothing. I'm going to move on to Chairman's report, which will be brief tonight. I want to thank everyone for being here on this snowy night, and we have a lot of work to get done this evening, so I'm going to keep my remarks short. But I want to just note this board has been extremely busy over the past month with supervisory nurse interviews and subcommittee meetings, proposed regulations for the storage, disposal of hazardous materials. We've had a number of activities around that. Proposed amendments involving the new Board of Health fee schedules. We had a presentation to the Chamber of Commerce, our director and myself. We had a kickoff to Triton, the Public Health Excellent Grants with Lexington and Wilmington. And last night, the formalization of that grant with the selectmen. Congratulations to Mary Beth Welch. She'll be with us for another 3 years. Congratulations. And most important, happy birthday. to the town of Burlington. Today was 224 years.
Wow.
So let's get started. All right. We're going to do permits first, and that is Protogene 4 Burlington Woods Drive, renewal of permit with 2 new protocols. Please sit down and state your name for the recording secretary, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Barton.
And how do you spell your last name?
Barton.
He has to get it right.
Good.
Is there anybody else who would like to join you?
I think it's just me, but these guys might help if I have any questions I need help with.
Okay. Is it Dr. Chris Barton?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please note that recording. Okay? Okay, thank you. So who is going to present? I guess is our environmental engineer. I think you know. It's Chris Mathis. Please.
So this is just a quick summary of the approved protocol at Protogene and the proposed protocols for your review tonight. It was prepared by our Associate Director, Mike Green, and I will give you the overview. You may recall that Protogene was granted a permit by this board in May of 2022. At that time, they were approved to do one protocol that was using a risk group 3 agent lentivirus in a BSL-2 approved laboratory. That protocol was the assay the biosafety of cell and gene therapy products and the cloning tracking fate of genetically modified cells with a focus on the genes. They are proposing to renew that protocol. They are also looking to add a second protocol, which is of the same name, but it's focusing on the proteins, not the genes. And the other one that one does not require approval because it did not require approval of the IBC. It's just a slight variation of the existing protocol. So it was voted by the IBC to not require approval. You can obviously review it though and approve it. The third one is a analysis of botulinum neurotoxin protein, and that is, it will not include any rDNA manipulation. However, the botulinum neurotoxin is a risk group 2 agent, but it is also a select agent under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. As I mentioned, the gene therapy RNA and DNA analysis was approved last year. The gene therapy protein analysis is the slight modification to that one, and that one will also be done in a BSL-2 and BSL-2 lab settings. And lastly, the newly proposed work on Botox will be done in a BSL-2 plus lab with enhanced security measures. And by enhanced security measures, Protogene has not only keycard access to their overall offices and labs, but then the labs, individual labs themselves has secondary keycard access for the people approved to go into those labs. And in the case of the Botox materials, they'll be using very, very small quantities, and the Botox itself will be stored in a lockbox. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Chris to give you the presentation.
No problem. Thank you all so much for having me here today. It's an absolute pleasure to come and represent the company, tell you about the science we're doing and how we're going to be doing this and all the protocols and procedures we have in place. I'm Chris Barton. I'm joined here by Michael and Brandon, who Michael works with us running our facility, and Brandon's a consultant who's been helping us with all of getting the procedures correct for us here. So on the next slide, just an overview of our company. We are a company that is focused on analytical development work. So what that is for pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies developing new drugs. We develop approaches to test those drugs, to check that they're safe and efficacious, to check that they have the right identity, and to check they have the right structure. So we do this for a wide variety of different clients. We don't manufacture drugs ourselves. All we do is testing for a wide range of different sponsors. We have 4 sites. One of them is the new lab we have here in Burlington, which we've been in for about 9 months. Then we have 3 other labs in Europe. Each of those labs has different sort of areas of expertise and different regulatory standards. The lab we have in Burlington is a good clinical laboratory practice lab, and it does a focus on manufacturing of biologics and also testing gene therapy agents. I myself, I'm here, I represent the scientific team, so I lead all the scientists on the site. Our CEO is also present on the site as well, and Chen Li, who's also named here, is one of our senior scientists as well on the site. So on the next slide, I want to talk, the next 2 slides, and me just talking a little bit about the science that we're doing and why we're doing this work. One of the key challenges in gene therapy now is we're evolving the tools to genetically, to treat people by injecting DNA into them, having that DNA express proteins. There's a big concern about that DNA integrating into the genome, potentially in oncogenes and causing cancer. So we've developed tools whereby we can take patient samples or animal samples in clinical trials for gene therapy, amplify their DNA, in the region of the gene that we're treating them with, and confirming where that gene is integrating into the genome in these very rare events. And we use that to say if the locations, how much integration is happening and where the locations are, so we can check that it's not integrating into oncogenes and causing cancer. So that's one of the areas of research that we do in our facility. The second one on the next slide is we also want to expand into looking at, so we've historically done a lot of work on protein characterization, and we want to expand that work to look at the protein coat that makes up a sort of protective capsule for gene therapy. So often when you do these gene therapy agents, they're in this complex protein coat, and we want to characterize the purity of that, the structure of that, and all of the things we need to know to make sure that we're making the right product. So this is the sort of science as a whole that we're talking about today. In terms of how we're doing that safely on the next slide and controlling that by protocols, we have 4 protocols that we've presented, 3 of which are being reviewed here today. The first one, 2002-1, is around gene therapy and vector integration analysis, and this is the one that we presented last year and was approved. The second protocol is very similar to that. The main difference is, instead of looking at the genes within a gene therapy agent, we're looking at the protein coat. We're using the same sort of health procedures, the same protections. It's all done in a BSL hood in the same spaces. The difference is, instead of extracting DNA from the sample, we're extracting proteins. But both of those approaches are destructive, and then we do additional tests in our lab. The third protocol, which I'll present in detail on is on botulinum toxin. We're doing this again. We're working with a sponsor to work out the protocols now for characterizing their protein in detail, again, to make sure it has the right structure and the right sequence. The third one, the fourth protocol that I think Mike said we didn't have to say here, but we put a protocol in anyway, is analysis of dengue and attenuated dengue vaccine. But I think that's already covered by our BSL characterization anyway. So that's a summary of the protocols. We had our IBC last week. It was a great meeting. We discussed all these protocols and went into detail of them, and they were approved, and then we're coming here for additional information. On the next slide, this is the work, the plans we have on gene and vaccine therapy. All of this work will be done in a BSL-2 lab within a controlled space. The laboratory itself is badge access controlled, and then within that lab, the BSL lab with the biosafety hoods is also access controlled, only access for trained staff. We're not producing any agents on site, so everything is testing. The volume of material we have is very low, and we have procedures in place for the destruction of material and also removal of that material once it's been destroyed from our facility. We also, and again, as highlighted on the slide, the level of material we're looking at is very low, in the order of a small number of cells or a small amount of tissue staining, tissue or a small amount of a viral vector. On the next slide, I want to go into this in a little bit more detail. This is the new protocol on the botulinum toxin that we're planning. So this work is supporting the development of a new botulinum protein. And what we'll be doing on this is detailed characterization of that protein. So again, ensuring its structure is correct and its sequence is correct. All of this work is done on a research scale. So the level in our facility is controlled to less than 1 milligram total. And we have that controlled. We have a laboratory information management system which controls how much material we have, and all samples are logged into that system, and we total that up. All samples will be shipped to us in a liquid form, so there's no reconstitution of powder for this. And we'll take that liquid and in a biosafety cabinet within the hood, we'll remove 10 micrograms of a sample, and that sample, the first step in that is protein extraction and digestion. So after that step has happened, the botulinum toxin is inactivated. So the very first thing we do is take it out and inactivate it. We control exposure in the lab to our scientists by we've added an additional training protocol for working with this toxin that all scientists will be trained on before they go to work in there. And access to the toxin is controlled by access control to the facility, to the lab, to the place where we have the biosafety hood, and we also have a key lock on the freezer, on the box where we'll store the botulinum. We have a protocol in place that all our scientists will be trained on before they'll do this work. It includes PPE, it includes best handling practices in the hood and how to work in the hood. It also includes how to inactivate the toxin. We have a procedure in place for that, and that procedure is consistent with all the guidelines on handling. And we have then waste disposal for how we'll handle liquid waste once it's been inactivated, how we'll handle solid waste, and how we'll handle any additional residual waste. All of that will go into dedicated waste streams that will be removed from the facility. On my next slide, I just want to give you an overview of our whole facility. I'll go through these quickly. These were ones from last year, but I just want you to be familiar with the facility in which we're doing this work. So we're at 4 Burlington Woods on the second floor of the building, and our lab takes up the majority of that second floor. We have secure bag access control into our facility and also into the lab, and only scientists can go into the lab area itself. And we have training required before scientists can go into the lab. We have a BSL-2 lab with 3 BSC hoods, PCR labs, multiple instrumentation rooms, and we have support services. Overall, our lab space is approximately half the facility. On our next slide, these are our floor plans. I'm highlighting here in red all the areas where our DNA work will occur within the facility. If you look at the room with the 3 green biosafety hoods, that's the room in which we would do the botulinum work. That's the room with badge access, and it's also under pressure as well. So again, to add additional security within that room. On the next slide, this just shows the waste management facilities we have. So we have multiple satellite accumulation areas where waste is stored, 1 main waste accumulation area, and an easy route out from that main area out of the lab. On the next slide, we have in place safety programs that cover all of this work. We have a general safety program, including an emergency action plan, chemical and biological training. We have a contract with an occupational health service for medical surveillance. We also have a contract with Brandon's company, Triumvirate, who provides us environmental health and safety guidance, and they're in once every 2 weeks to help us with any issues we have in the facility and run routine checks for us. We have a chemical hygiene plan in place and a biosafety manual in place and an emergency action plan, and all of these are available to our staff on site and printed out. And we have signage up across the facility that covers what to do. 2 more slides for me, many apologies. This shows our permit status. So we have permits for RDNA, which was complete last year, and we're finishing the renewal of that this year. Wastewater permits, flammable storage permits with the fire department, which was fun. I got to go to the fire department a few days before Christmas to hand it in person because it was good. That was brilliant. We got it in time. It was very nice. We have hazardous waste registration permit in place. And on the next slide, we have all of our contracts in place for sharps disposal, pest control, lab coat laundering, medical surveillance, water testing, sprinkler systems, and hazardous and biochemical waste with all of our vendors, and those are current contracts. Apologies, I've talked a lot there. On the next slide, I think this is my final slide. Hopefully we've given you an overview of some of the science we're planning to do, and also the sort of the procedures we put in place. I do want to say thank you for the town. It's been great. You guys visited our lab at the end of last year, and it's been a great dialogue, especially with Mike, so thank you for the support you've given us in setting up here.
Mr. Chair, I just want
Questions?
to clarify. So they're here to renew a permit on the first protocol that was discussed, and they're adding to that permit 2 additional protocols, so that would be 3, a permit renewal with 3 protocols.
Thank you.
I'd also add that the dengue work that they're doing is not covered by our regulations because it doesn't meet one of the 3 criteria. It's not our DNA work, it's not a risk group 3 agent, and it's not a select agent.
Okay.
And that's why it's not in your backup materials. And then the other thing is, we will need updated biosafety plan
Yep.
with the updates to the botulinum protocol that you discussed.
Sure, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, and I'll yes, we can get that for you.
So, thank you very much for coming. It's a privilege to have Protogene in this community. We have a nice relationship, but are there any questions? We are on television, we are on cable access, so that if anyone has any
Mr.
questions,
Chair, I just
please.
have actually 2 questions. I emphasize what the Mr. Chairman just mentioned. We're excited that you're here. And just to refresh my memory, how many employees do you have in your facility?
We currently have about 30 employees on site. We have 18 scientists.
Awesome. And how's the facility working out? And
It's working out great. So I think the first few months, there were, Michael's our facility manager, a number of glitches that have all been worked out, but it's working out very well now.
great. So I have one question for Christine, but first for you. So do you have experience with these new agents that you're bringing in
So what we've done,
either at your other labs or
Yeah.
prior?
this is why we involved Brandon in a lot of this discussion, because you have previous experience doing this before. Yeah, you can come up.
Please come on up.
So Brandon's our advisor on working with these.
Brandon, what is your last name, please?
So my name is Dr. Brandon Linz, L-I-N-Z. I'm the Director of Biosafety for Triumvirate Environmental.
Okay, just sign in, please, so our recording secretary has the spelling correct. Thank you for coming, too.
And Brandon's been helping us put all these procedures in place.
And for context, so I am a high containment microbiologist by training. I'm a registered biosafety professional with the American Biosafety Association. And most germane to this conversation, I'm a former responsible official for a select agent and toxin program utilizing botulinum toxin.
So I guess you have experience.
Yes, I
And you
do.
and Watchlam have a pretty close relationship then, I guess.
Yes.
So as a Board of Health or to the community, what would be the biggest risk or the biggest concern of working with botulinum in the town?
Working with botulinum, so the biggest risk.
Botulinum.
Yes, I think I've already been addressed. So typically when working with a lyophilized powder is when most of your risks are going to be present. Because they already receive it in aqueous solution well below a lethal dose, the risks are minimal, if not present at all.
Awesome. Great.
Let me add to that,
Yeah,
please, if I have Dr. Linz. In 1974, so I'm really dating myself, I was taking a doctoral course as an undergraduate, and one of the graduate students ingested botulism, anaerobic botulism, anaerobic, and they had to fly him somewhere for the antitoxin. Does any of the facilities, and you're going to be very much careful, we're talking about micrograms here, and I do understand that, but when he came to me and said, I got some cooked beef in my mouth, I almost, anyway, yeah, he's your eyes. They had to fly in the antitoxin. Does Mount Auburn Hospital, is that who you deal with, Mount Auburn Hospital?
Yeah, Mount Auburn
Or
is the-
Leahy, do they have any of that antitoxin on, do you need it around?
Unlikely. So the instance you're talking about was an actual exposure event to the Clostridium bacterium. So that's the producing agent for the botulinum toxin. And it was further ingested in the actual route Clostridium is infectious towards. In this case, they're not working with any live biological agent. So the toxin is not going to be produced. The amounts they have is all that's going to be present. It's not there's a live organism culturing it. The hospitals typically don't carry botulinum toxin around. Maybe MGH or Beth Israel might, and that's emphasis on might. Otherwise, a specific occupational health program is in place for those tier 1 programs, but even then the antitoxin would not be the best option in the absence when you're not working with the actual Clostridium bacterium.
I understand. Thank you.
Just one more question before
Please,
I
go
move
ahead.
on. So just a general question, in the 9 months they've been here, no issues with following the biosafety regulations? The IBC meeting, I saw you attended, everything went well, and there was...
I went to both. They had one
Yeah.
last year and then again this year, and I attended both. I was not on site. Mike did that. But no, we had no issues, no. And there were, in the last IBC, there were no reports of any problems over the past
Awesome. I wouldn't
10
expect it,
months.
but just
Yeah.
want to ask the question. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? I have one other question. The lentivirus, it's a BSL-2, but you use it in a BSL-3 hooded area, is that correct?
I think it's
Because you're
BSL
calling it 2+.
2+, yeah, we're not BSL-3, no.
Well, why is it 2+? Is that because you're using BSL-3 techniques?
No, I think it's the 2+ designation, I think, is we have additional security and additional control of getting into the site, right?
Yeah, so the 2+ designation is really for the botulinum toxin.
Yeah.
The lentivirus, we can safely handle at BSL-2 because it's 3rd generation and the inserts are all non-toxic and non-oncogenic. If we were dealing with a 2nd generation or a toxic insert, we might warrant a BSL-2+. And the facility can handle that.
Yeah.
It's negative airflow, it's access controlled, but the PPE and training doesn't warrant an additional upgrade to BSL-3 practices.
Okay, so that's why it's 2+, I understand.
But the lentivirus is in a BSL-2+ lab.
Yes, so
You're using BSL-2 practices even though you don't
And actually,
really need to.
all of the work we're discussing occurs in that BSL-2+ lab, because all of the free biosafety cabinets we have are in that space.
And we don't have any dengue fever per se in the United States?
No, so the dengue work is actually, the dengue work that we're doing is around a vaccine, and actually the majority of that is BSL-1, which is the attenuated vaccine. The protocol we put in is that we're doing work in that case. The science of the work we're doing is, again, we're understanding the maturation of the vaccine. And there's a case where we might want to test some active dengue and immediately activate it in the protocol, and that's why we had that protocol in place. But yeah. Again, that would all also occur within the BSL-2+ lab. So.
You have 2 other colleagues here. Would any of them like to add anything? They took the time of coming here this evening. Would you either of you like to add anything to this?
Sing, dance, something like that.
Sir, are you also with? No. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were with Barge. Okay, thank you very much. So if there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to...
Yeah, I have a question.
Who is this, please? Oh, Phyllis Edsel. Phyllis, welcome.
Hi. I have actually 2 questions.
Sure.
If I may. Well, the first one is, I'm curious as to how the research is funded.
Sure.
And then my second question is, are there any security protocols for personnel? What I mean is, do your personnel undergo security background checks?
Okay, that's good. Those are both very good questions. So in terms of the funding of our work, so all of the work we do is, our work is paid for by our sponsors, and our sponsors are almost exclusively pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies operating within the United States and generally the EU. In terms of our staff and background checks, I would have to get back to you on the specific nature of that. We do background checks, I think, as part of our interview process. I do not know the full details of that from HR. All of the staff, though, do undergo training before they're able to work in our BSL labs. Additionally, for our botulinum work, there are a very limited number of staff who are trained for that, and no staff can do that work unless they've completed that training. So we have a special protocol we've set up for that that includes training.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Phyllis.
questions.
Is there anybody else online? I'm getting used to this, of seeing people online. I'm trying to, is there anybody else online who would like to ask a question? Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you.
If there's anybody else, if nothing, I'll ask for a motion for approval. We have to do this,
Is it just one permit?
is it one?
It's one permit with three protocols.
With three protocols. It says two, we're going to amend that to three.
Well, it's an additional 2 protocols.
Yeah, one is a renewal
Right.
and 2 new ones.
I want to make sure, so I'm looking for a motion for approval for a renewal and 2 new protocols.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the renewal of the permit and including 2 new protocols for Protogene for Burlington Woods Drive.
Second.
Second is who?
Mary Beth.
Mary Beth. Any other questions? Any other discussion? Any discussion from the electronics? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
500. Thank you. Before you leave, doctors.
Sure.
The Burlington Board of Health, you might have received a notice, has put together a scientific and professional faculty to, and you will be invited. We would like to have as many people from the biotech community become part of this volunteer faculty in case we get questions from nonprofits, schools, the Rotary, the churches, the synagogues, the mosque. Anybody has, and we'd like to then say, gee, there is somebody who has registered, we have that they may be able to give something back to the community and speak. Something that we've done as an executive in the pharmaceutical industry, we did that. However, this one is volunteer.
Yeah, no.
So-
Please be in touch with me about that. That'd be excellent, actually.
You know, we would very much like
awesome.
to invite everybody from Protogene to become members. They would become members of the Burlington Medical Reserve Corps, Volunteer Reserve Corps, and they would be quarried, as well as they would be then eligible for all of the municipal and all of our Volunteer Reserve Corps trainings, and we have many.
That's awesome. And we have a number of local staff. So, I mean, I live just in Arlington, so that's awesome.
So take
thank
a
you.
look at our website, and I'll make sure that our Associate Director.
Right, so the application is on our website, and you can also reach out to Mike, can get you the application as well.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And any questions you have, just get in touch with us. So, cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, by the way, on your February 23rd, 2023, there is page 3 has a misspelled word. Out of the hundreds of pages, I found a misspelled word. It is murine, M-U-R-I-N-E, not M-A-U-R-I-N-E.
I'm glad that you were here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unbelievable.
I read every single
I know you
word.
do.
We have a hearing now, and this is what you have published this, proposed regulations for the
Yes.
storage and disposal of hazardous materials. You have that present, you have a
Yes, I'm
presentation?
gonna, yep. just-
We have the draft. We presented the draft at the Chamber of Commerce. And also, you have proposed amendments to the Board of Health fee schedule, which is a different issue.
Yeah, I have two separate presentations on each, so I'll go through the first one first.
Good, thank you.
All right. Okay. Okay. So the first item on the agenda is the proposed regulations for the storage and disposal of hazardous materials. So currently, the Board of Health enforces Article 14, the Control of Toxic and Hazardous Materials bylaw, and the Board of Health Hazardous Building Component Management Plan policy. The bylaw was first enacted in the 1980s and requires those storing any hazardous materials to pay a fee and register with the Board of Health, so you're all familiar with that. Registrants must adhere to the bylaw and undergo a yearly inspection. The Board of Health policy requires that commercial renovation and demolition projects properly dispose of all hazardous materials before commencing work. So, and to enforce the policy, we have a checklist that people must fill out for commercial and residential demolition and for commercial renovation. And they have to do that before they get their building permit. This local proposed regulation, so this is different, this is going to be a local Board of Health regulation, combines both the bylaw and the policy. And both the bylaw and the policy are outdated, so this is an attempt to, bring us more up to date on those. The purpose of the regulation is to establish plans and procedures for the safe management, handling, and disposal of hazardous materials. So what's different between the bylaw and the local regulation? Instead of a registration, this regulation requires that a permit be obtained. The bylaw requires that any institution storing hazardous materials in a cumulative quantity of 220 pounds, which is about 25 gallons, depending upon the material. The regulation has the same threshold, so it's the 220 pounds or 25 gallons. However, we have added extremely hazardous substances above the EPA threshold planning quantity. So there's a list, and that's provided in your backup material, of those extremely hazardous substances. And any EHS that is above the 220 pounds, where the threshold is above the 220 pounds or 25 gallons, has been highlighted on that list. So you can see on that list which chemicals would qualify for having to get a permit. Now, if you have an extremely hazardous substance, you need to also fill out a Tier 2. So if a company has this material, they're going to know it because they're going to have to fill out a Tier 2 report anyways. Similar to the biological safety regulations, any property owner that is planning to lease to a tenant who's storing hazardous materials must notify the Board of Health in writing no less than 30 days prior to occupancy. So we added that to the biological safety, and now we're adding it to this regulation. Notification can be found on our website for that. Any institution undertaking the demolition of a commercial or residential building or the renovation of a commercial building must obtain a permit from the Board of Health. So right now, it's not a Board of Health permit, but this local regulation would make it a permitting process. It allows the Board of Health, and this is something that I've added in here, but really is not really different. This is also in the local bylaw. Allows the Board of Health by a majority vote to require the collection of soil or groundwater samples at any location where hazardous materials have been stored or any property where contamination may exist. And that has come up in the past when discussing like a document that's come, a project that's come in from planning. What else is different? So exemptions. This is a listing here of the exemptions that we put in it. One thing that is not in your copy that I would like to add is the fuel, oil, propane, and LPG tanks. So it's actually section 7C. Would also like to add batteries to that. So batteries being, they're self-contained in like a computer backup room. So we'd like to add that in as well. So when you do vote on it, we could vote on it with the motion to add that and batteries to section 7C. So this is a list of what's different. So if you can see here, retail establishments, fuel, oil, propane, and LPG tanks for heating or providing hot water. This would include like a backup generator, domestic cleaners, healthcare centers and clinical labs, refrigerants other than ammonia and LPG, biological waste, and then swimming pools regulated under the Mass DPH. So we already have a permit process for swimming pools. So we're just going to make sure that when we do the swimming pool inspections, the inspectors are trained on what to look for with storing swimming pool chemicals so that they can do that during the inspection. So we're not requiring people to get 2 permits. The requirements of the regulations, so a permit is required for hazardous material storage above the threshold amounts for EHS, commercial and residential demolition, and commercial renovation. The permit requires for storage is they're gonna have to have a spill control plan. That's not new. Readily available safety data sheets, also not new. They're going to have to store their materials to prevent contamination of air, groundwater, and surface water, and which will minimize accidental release. That is not new. There's product type containers on an impervious surface, not new. Secondary containment, need to have that. Separation of incompatible materials and proper labeling. So all those things are not new. We added in here the UST compliance with MGL 310 CMR 80, that's the Mass DEP regulations. So right now, the bylaw has a lot of information in it about USTs and how they should, a lot of outdated information. And the Mass DEP regulations have been updated since then, and they're continuously updated. So we added this in here so that we can use those Mass DEP regulations to enforce the UST compliance. And that's it for the hazardous materials. So we did have a couple of subcommittees on this as well to hash through everything. So I want to thank the subcommittee for all the work that they did on this, because this is starting from new, from scratch. And it was a lot to put these together, so thank you. And I think there might be a few people here as well that might want to comment.
Can I just make a comment, because I was on the subcommittee?
Sure.
So I think you're right, there was a lot to sift through, and you did a great job, so I appreciate there was a lot of pages to go through and compare. I think, and just to make sure that it's out there, right, I think the biggest conversation or hurdle was defining what a hazardous material was, not necessarily what the substance was, but what quantity or weight would designate a permit fill. And we went through a lot of different language variations, because, if you put a limit, a quantity limit on some, it doesn't cover some of the materials. So I think where we ended up, which is in the definition of hazardous materials, and I think it's spot on. I think it's great, and it lends back to the state document. It's a state document, right? That federal document of what actually each chemical would be considered hazardous waste based on amount. So good work on that.
Yes, we kicked that around quite a while before we landed on this. I think the most important piece here is not only do we want to protect the community, we want to protect those who work in this town also. So, as I said before, we have had excellent history with hazardous materials through the hazardous materials bylaw, and now this is an update. The bylaw, which we hope will be brought up and at the September town meeting, and we will ask for it to no longer be appropriate. At that time, was put together in the 1980s, so this is long due to have an update. So hopefully we will rescind the bylaw in September. This will go into effect tomorrow?
Upon publication.
Upon publication. It has already been advertised. We did present this to the Chamber of Commerce. So to that end, we're going to take a vote tonight. Does anyone else have any comments from the board first? How about we'll go to anybody in here would like to comment? Okay. Could we go to the screen, please? Is there anybody online who'd like to make a comment? I hear none.
I actually have one more question, Mr.
Sure.
Chair. I'd be interested in hearing if the chamber had any questions or comments back to your presentations at all.
They did. They were gonna, some of them were gonna, said that they were gonna look at it and comment back, but I hadn't heard anything from them.
Nobody voiced any concerns over it?
The chairman is very professional, they're very interested, very supportive. Its chairman, Ms. Hung, who was an attorney, did a very nice job in the introductions. And to that end, I thought it was a very positive
Good.
morning.
One question.
Sure.
And sounds like it was an enormous amount of work. You had multi-subcommittees.
Right.
I'm looking at the comparison. Where it's blacked out, is it that you just didn't have that information, or
What comparison?
the,
That's in the.
That's in the next part.
Fee
That's on the
schedule,
next-
that's a separate
on the
part.
next.
I had
That's
the
on-
same question.
Oh, that's on the fee schedule.
Okay.
That's on the
That's
fee
separate.
schedule.
I skipped ahead, I'm sorry.
Skipped ahead, you jumped ahead. You're ahead of all of us.
I read it two-way.
One other thing on this is, right now, I think there's around 110, 120 on the list, but a lot of them, after we took a look at it, with the exemptions, are going to be taken off. They
Okay.
won't have to get a permit.
Okay, thank you.
And, we're trying, no matter how if you improperly handle any chemicals, you could have a problem. But, we can't go out and, as David was saying, and regulate all of them. But we're trying to capture those people who have the highest quantities and the most hazardous substances. So I think that this does do that. And, we would spend a lot of time going out to take a look at a, backup generator that, is a diesel tank that's, self-contained, has secondary containment on it. There's nothing for us to look at. There's nothing to inspect. So I think that this will allow us, even though we have less people on the list now, it's going to allow us to focus more time on finding those people that need to get permitted, because we really have to go out there and take a look and say, okay, who qualifies for this? And I also think what we put in here about the property managers will help with that as well. I think that did come up as a question. I think mainly that was a question from property managers, is what their or owners, what their responsibilities are.
Thank you.
So I want to make sure that we get this appropriate. If there are no other questions, no
I
discussion.
have a question, if you don't mind.
Please come up.
How would this change affect the average homeowner here in Burlington? Like if you
Please come up and sign in, so
Sure. Just-
we'd appreciate it. Because we're on
Sure.
cable access.
Doug McKinnon, 22 Hilltop Drive, Burlington,
I'm sorry,
Mass.
first,
Douglas McKinnon, 22
Thank you
Hilltop
for coming.
Drive.
good.
I'm just wondering how the change would affect the average homeowner, or is it more commercial driven?
Yeah, it's more commercial driven, so it's businesses that store hazardous materials. You would have to be a business, and you can't do that at your home anyways, right? So that wouldn't affect you. The only way I think it may affect you would be is if you were gonna demolish your home and, you're doing a demolition, you then would have to get a permit from us to make sure that, like, your oil tank was removed and, you know, anything, all of the hazardous materials were removed off the property before you demolish the house. So the only residential effect it would have, I believe, would be on demolition, because the renovation portion of it is strictly commercial as well. Because again, we can't go out and, you know, get everybody who's renovating their house get a permit, you know?
New swimming pools, or is that just?
It is focused on the businesses in town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's quite a lot of demos going on in town, though.
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
And you get permits. You know, the mercury switches, you know, in the thermostats, we want to make sure that they don't get demoed in
Yeah.
mercury. We want to make sure that the oil tanks are empty. There are some still outside oil tanks. You make sure that they're removed prior to demo.
And asbestos is the big, you know.
But that is something that's going on right now. There's
Right,
no
through the
change.
state, right? Because I had my oil replaced, and I think it was like a state thing, right? It was
If you
sort of
just, if you're not
state-
demoing, you wouldn't be coming to us, but if it's for
Okay.
just.
So if I was just replacing my oil heater in the house,
Yeah. that
I
would-
wouldn't need a permit?
No.
No, you wouldn't.
Okay, thank
You
you.
may need one from the building or plumbing department.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not from
Fire
the water.
Thank you.
And since you brought it up, if you have any old chemicals in your house, household hazardous waste day, twice a year is a vehicle to get rid of it. What is our next upcoming, do we have one?
June 3rd.
June 3rd.
Yep, I go there, paint, all paint.
Okay.
Not
Batteries
latex.
No latex.
Batteries and
So thank you for coming and thank you for bringing that up. You did a
Good question, yeah.
good question and allowed us also to promote Household Hazardous Waste Day. Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the Burlington Board of Health regulations for the storage and disposal of hazardous materials with the addition of batteries to the exemption section,
7C.
7C. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I have a motion by the vice chair, second by Mary Beth. Any other questions? Last call. All in favor? Aye. 500. Very important regulation on the birthday of Burlington. 224th birthday of Burlington.
Wow.
Okay, now we want to go ahead with the next hearing, proposed amendments to the Board of Health fee schedule, and I think you have another presentation.
Yep. So this is where the chart comes in, and I can explain that's in your backup materials. So the blacked out, I did take a look at different cities and towns, what they do, what we're doing. The blacked out means that they don't do that. They're using a different fee schedule, doing it a different way. So for example, Newton doesn't use the seating, the number of seats, the way Burlington currently does. They use risk categories, and that's why the part at the top is blacked out. So this is just to give you a comparison of some other towns, what we do, and then what we're proposing. And then also included in here is, it says Burlington Board of Health fee schedule on the top. This is just the clean version of what we're proposing. Okay? So the first changes we wanted to, I'm just going to go over in my presentation the changes that we're proposing. And the first one is to food establishments. So Marlene and I took a close look at this, and what we're proposing is to change from the number of the seats to the food process type. So as you can see, no one else is doing this around us, and so this would be pretty new, but we think that this is a good way to reflect the fees. Because the number of seats in establishment does not reflect a complexity of an operation. We're proposing to base the fees on, like I said, food process type, and
The complexity of the inspections.
Right. And I also have in your backup material some information here on what the food process approach is, okay? So process 1 is a food preparation with no cooking and no trips through the temperature danger zone. So temperature danger zone, that's what we're looking at, because that's where we can get foodborne illnesses. Process 2 is food preparation for same-day service with 1 trip through the temperature danger zone. An example of a trip through a temperature danger zone is hot holding. So if you're taking something and you're heating it up and then you're holding it hot, that's a trip through the temperature danger zone. Process 3 is complex food preparation with 2 or more trips through the danger zone. And we did take a look, and I know, Ed, you asked me for this, and we did take a look at it with regards to, how this is going to change the fees. So we went through all of our establishments, took a look at them, took a look at the, where they are now and what process we would place them in. And, some of them went up and some of them went down. So, I mean, some are going to go up and some are going to go down. But overall, it's only about $2,000 more than what we would normally collect through fees for food service establishments. So it's about the same, but depending upon what you do. So if you're someplace who has not many seats, but you are process 3, then it's going to go up for you. So, I mean, that was a bit unavoidable for some of these using this method, anyways, with changing any type of method. So the retail food.
I see some of the food court, like the mall food courts or something like that, they probably, because I don't know how you calculate the seat, right?
Yeah, we wouldn't calculate seats for them.
Right, exactly.
It's more like the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, we have a couple of sushi places down the mall, right? So,
Yeah.
and they have a HACCP plan. I'm assuming that's,
Yeah, so we also had, for some reason, and I don't know why, if you look on this change schedule, we had in here sushi, $50.
Right.
So why we just had it for sushi, I don't know why we had that. So we changed it from sushi to special process. So special process would be anything that needs a HACCP plan. So we just kind of put that in there to incorporate it. So if you're a complex, you're a process 3, you would pay the fee for process 3, and then if you had a special process, like sushi or some other HACCP plan type of thing, then we would add on the $50. We do have some places that just do a special process, so if they just do sushi, then that would be the $50.
$50.
Yeah. So it's different across the board, but. So then the retail food, we removed the square footage and made all retail food a $100 fee. So before, we had it based on how big the place was, which really doesn't matter. It's retail food, so it doesn't matter how big it is. So we were able to, thought that the fee should be the same. We added food market. So we're starting to see more places, smaller places, that really, they're calling themselves food markets. They are food markets, but they're not supermarkets. They might only have like one special department. So we added the food market, and for one department at $200, and then if you have 2 or more departments, which would be like a supermarket, which would be $600. So it's less than one department or 2 or more departments for retail food. And then the temporary food, so this was another area where we really had to think about, because currently we don't have any fees for temporary food events, and we have a lot of temporary food events, and we spend a lot of time on temporary food events. And some of these events have a lot of vendors, so you could have a one-day temporary food event that has, 10, 20 vendors, and then we're permitting all the vendors separately. They all need to get permits, because we need to be able to take a permit away if we go and do an inspection and they're not in compliance. So it's individual permits for each vendor there. But, we found that you really also need, when you have a big event like this, you need somebody on site to basically oversee it. to make sure everybody there has come to us and gotten a food permit, and then also to go around and check and make sure that they have what they need. They need hand wash stations, they need, thermometers, they need hot and or cold holding, so somebody needs to oversee that. So,
Does that fall under when we have activities on the common?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we go to Celebrate Burlington.
Yep, no, I know.
And we have an inspector out there that each one of those vendors, those food vendors, has a permit from us. So with this change, it would be each food vendor would still have a permit from us, but then whoever's running it would also need to get a permit from us. In this case, it would be the rec department, but we waive the fees for nonprofits and.
I think one, just last year, I saw Marlene there, and Marlene was there quite a big time.
Yeah.
Inspecting every single truck and making comments, and in some cases, making them do last-minute arrangements. So I was very impressed that Marlene was there.
Yeah, and one year, I think it was the gluten-free festival at the Marriott. Both me and Marlene had to go. There was so many vendors, it was on a Saturday. It took us like half the day, both of us, going through and going to each vendor because it was just all food. So, and even like a farmer's market type of thing too, which is, so that we've kind of taken out the farmer's market thing, so I'll get to that. So the temporary food, so what we're proposing is if you have a temporary food event and you organize it and you have more than 3 vendors, then we're saying $100 fee. So 3 or more vendors, you as the organizer are getting a permit, and it's a $100 fee. If you're a temporary food vendor attending that event, it's $25. If you're a temporary food vendor and it's just you attending one event, it's just $25 for you. So if we had, I don't know, it's like a Celebrate Burlington with 6 vendors, we would have a permit for the organizer, and then each one of those vendors would then have to get a permit as well.
Susan, so is this a new category that we never used to charge a fee for in the past?
Yeah, we never had it.
Please be aware that potluck dinners and those types of events at nonprofits do not fall under these categories.
Yeah.
So if you're worrying that there is a church or synagogue or nonprofit who's having a potluck dinner, we do not charge because we can't charge for that.
And potluck dinners are, well, actually, bake sales are exempt.
Bake sales,
If it's baked goods, it would be exempt. Yeah. But we're always happy, even, to give out
Exemptions.
advice as well. So people should call us, to let us know what they're doing. We'll let them know what they should do and go from there.
I was going to make a joke, but...
Yeah, you look like you would have.
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
Oh, jeez.
So, and then we also added seasonal food event organizers for more than 1 month. So we're seeing these pop up a lot. They're calling it farmers markets, like they had them Wayside Commons, or Common Craft might have something that's going on all season or for a few months. Like at these different areas, they're having these type of events. And we might not go out every single time, but we need to go out and check on it, make sure everyone's permitted, everyone understands, what is required. So if you're a seasonal food event organizer and it's going to be for more than 1 month, it's a $150 fee, and then anyone coming to your event, which is a temporary food vendor, will be $25. Sometimes these food vendors come and go, so you might be at the farmer's market 1 week and then 3, you're not there again for 3 weeks. We're not going to charge you a fee each time you come. You'll be under the umbrella of the seasonal food event. I think I covered everything on that. So that's everything to the food. Other proposed changes, so for plan reviews, we used to just have food plan review, where we kept that and we just called it new food establishment, but then we added new swimming pools because we also have to do plan reviews for a swimming pool that's coming to town to be built. So we have to make sure we look at the plans, make sure they meet the requirements.
That is not residential.
Not yet, semi-public swimming
Residential.
pools.
That's commercial pools.
Yep, semi-public, like it might be for a hotel or a condominium complex, that type of thing. And then we increased for regular swimming pools, the outdoor and indoor pool permits from $100 to $150. And then added the hazardous material storage and disposal permits. So,
But please go back.
Yep.
The increased outdoor and indoor pool permits, again, are commercial. They're not residential. I want
Right.
to make sure that people understand that.
yeah,
We're not going to charge you if you have a pool in your backyard.
right. And then, so for the hazardous materials, do you have a question?
I was just going to say, so for a condo building, that's an outdoor pool, they have to come and be reviewed for the safety of the pool and pay a new permit? Okay.
Yeah,
that's-
so we call them semi-public.
Yeah, but it's not just like a hotel in town, it's,
Right.
got it.
We do
Apartment
that, we do that
buildings.
today, that's what.
Yeah, so we,
Yeah, it's just the fees going up.
Right.
yeah. And part of that too is like, you need to be a certified pool operator to inspect these, and so we have to keep that up. And then hazardous material storage and disposal permits. So we had this older way of doing it, basing it on very large, small quantity generator, then adding depending on how much storage you had and how many underground storage tanks you have. Really, in the whole scheme of things, we were thinking that it doesn't really have an effect as much on the inspection or the risk of, what they're doing. So we changed the fees to hazardous material storage. So if you're storing hazardous materials, $150. And then we added in the commercial renovation and the commercial and residential demolition. So $25 for a renovation, $50 for a demolition. Right now, we have, under the component policy, we're only charging them $10. But, it's probably more work for demolition, depending on if you're demolishing a large commercial building, then that's a lot of work. For a renovation of one suite, in one area, not so much. So it kind of varies with that too.
We do inspect all demolitions prior to demo.
Yeah, but the renovation is not
Right.
as much.
You're just talking at this moment, you say demolition, just commercial.
No, we inspect residential.
Commercial and
Residential, so that's my question. So if you're inspecting demolition of residential, you wouldn't inspect if they were a swimming pool. So if some folks are buying homes that they're
No, not a
tearing,
swimming pool.
what if they're tearing down the swimming pool that is with the house?
Then that's under the building department, how we would fill it in or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking for hazardous materials.
So if you're demoing an entire house, we would go doing a walkthrough inspection of the house, looking for remaining hazardous materials, There's still air conditioning units in the windows, or there's, still an oil tank in the basement, or there's a room in the basement full of paint and, oil, or there's a shed out back full of oil and paints and whatnot, fertilizers.
And you find these all the time, because we've talked about
I
this.
do.
All the time. So a house is being demolished, and we're having a lot of houses being demolished, we do find some pretty nasty things.
Okay, so the general implications, I've talked a little bit about this already, but, so we added an asterisk in there, waiving the fees for nonprofits. I believe these fees are more reflective of the complexity of operations, reviews, and inspections. And then the overall effect of the fee changes for the food, like I said, it's around 2,000. I got 2,900 here. For the hazardous materials, we exempted under the new regulations 37, so 120 last year versus 84 this year. So the difference is $400 less in fees this year. but we did exempt them as well. So I didn't look at what wouldn't be exempted, I just looked at the lesser amount.
So what's being exempted?
So under the hazardous material regulations, things like storage of oil or propane for heat or hot water, things like what was another one? Let's see. Swimming pools, you know, that are already regulated. So I had that list.
Retail.
Is there any one business, industry that's going to look at this and say, I'm getting, like, it's going up tenfold my permit fee, like that they're going to voice a concern over?
I don't think so, because if you look at, well, you know, I suppose if you're just, you know, if you're only storing, you're not generating, and you have less than 300 gallons, and you have no underground storage tanks, you would have paid $100 in the past. Now you're paying $150. So, I mean, I think the most that anybody would go up would be $50.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, you know, a lot of these are probably going to go down. So if you're a very large quantity generator and you have a bunch of underground storage tanks and, you know, you have over 300 gallons and you are paying a large fee, you're going to see that drop.
How old are these fees? I mean, it doesn't seem like this is something that we do on a regular basis, so pretty much our fees are pretty minimal if these are not, like, did we renew these last year, or are these 5 years old?
They're renewed every year.
Every year, okay.
Yeah. So this year, instead of, we usually do the renewal process March 15th. So I added April 15th, so that'll give us a buffer month. We pushed it out a month.
Okay.
And then we'll send the notification to all of the hazardous materials storage that are not exempt. And they'll have to fill out the application and get the permits with these new fees if you pass them.
Mary Beth, you caught that complicated chart. Are you all set with that?
Yeah, no, I was just going back a little bit about the pool. Not all pools are filled in, you know, and they could be heated by propane. So I'm thinking the same if you're tearing down a home and there could be possible hazard materials and you're taking that off the site. I know you do a lot of that inspections, but there are some that they don't fill in a pool. They break it up and take it away, right?
So what would qualify
That's what
under our, what we would be doing if they did have a propane tank, I
Yeah,
suppose?
yeah.
Then that will qualify.
Right, and that's why I'm kind of thinking we're kind of not, how is that being followed in here? If there is a pool and they're demoing the home and they're going to demo the pool, they're not just filling it in. So how would we?
So they would have to, if it's a heated pool, they would have to get, you know, when I do my inspection, I'm going to walk past the pool, and if I see, you know, a propane tank there, is that empty? Or I'll go kick it and make sure it's empty.
So it's the same. They may not be keeping the pool to go with the new home. They may be, and they may not just be filling it in.
Right, but I would also, you know, they would have some place where they kept their pool chemicals, and it's usually in a shed. A homeowner has that. I just did one 2 weeks ago, and, you know, I made sure the shed was empty, and because the sheds are notoriously forgotten, and all the pool chemicals were gone. It wasn't a heated pool, so they were good to go. Or they had one of those solar blankets, but it didn't have a, you know, heater on it, and the pool was being removed. So, and they cannot. So you also cannot even pump out your pool if it's still chlorinated. So it has to sit for so long so that the chlorine goes away.
So it is covered.
Yeah.
I guess I'm
Well,
trying to figure out where it's covered in this list.
If somebody is just getting rid of their pool, it's not covered. I mean, if you're just going to fill in your pool and keep your house, we're not going to be out there.
Well, that's different. Filling it in is one thing.
Or demoing it.
Demoing it. And
But it's not demo for a pool. It would be demo for,
The structure.
The
Yeah.
construction of the, if they're doing the house, it's
property
still,
structure.
it falls under, that's what you're saying, Christine. If it's doing the house and they're actually demoing the pool, it's falling under that.
Yeah. But if they were just removing a pool, it wouldn't be covered, I don't think, right?
right.
Yeah.
Why were we, I'm just curious why we were compared to these particular towns.
I was looking for towns that I thought were, I didn't just go by the neighboring towns. I was looking at more towns that might be a little bit the same as kind of like us, or the ones that had different types of methods. So for example,
Okay.
for example, some of these ones, like on food, I didn't want to choose towns that are all using the seat method. I wanted to show some different types.
The different
of methods.
types,
Some
okay.
are using risk category, some are using low, medium, and high. And so I was trying to get different, just see different ways that they're doing it. And not, because I was afraid, a lot of these neighboring towns might just be, well, when I looked at them, were doing it just the same way as we are. So I was
Right.
trying to reflect some differences.
In this schedule, does this go, especially for like the food establishment, do they receive this schedule? They receive, this new fee schedule, they get a copy of it? No, it's just on our site,
Not until you pass it.
not until we pass it, okay.
But it has been the proposed amendments you did
It's been
post
published
a
in the
hearing.
paper. Yeah,
Newspaper
perfect.
for the
Okay.
hearing.
Yeah.
So if there's anybody, I don't see anybody here, unless you'd like to make comment. If there's anybody online would like to make comment on this, hearing none, then any other questions? It is complicated, I agree. I will get used to it.
Thank you, Susan.
But I think the key here is, I've said this for years and years, and I know you've said it too. Anybody can eat anywhere in Burlington and not be worried that there's going to be an issue. We are out there, we inspect. We have 2 people who inspect full-time, a health agent and an associate health inspector. And under the new grant, we may even have more, we don't know. So with that, I'm going to look for a motion to approve. I want to make sure that we have this,
Proposed
we want to pass the
amendments to the Board of Health fee schedule.
the amendments of the Board of Health fee schedule. So I would need that motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendments to the Board of Health fee schedule.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Gail. Last call, any comments? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's 5-0-0. All right. Let me see what's next.
Interesting.
Public health excellence.
Getting at my, I gotta get organized here for a second, excuse me.
All your papers.
All my paperwork, here we go. Brings us to discussion, very exciting, the Public Health Excellence Grant intermunicipal agreement.
Yeah, so I wanted to put this on the agenda just to update the board on where we're at. I can go through the presentation I had at the select board meeting if you want me to, Ed. I did include it in your materials.
I will ask the board what they want to do. Do you want us to go through it, or?
Yes,
we already know the components of it, so if
yeah.
something
I mean,
new
I
is added,
so you know basically the first slide on here, which was a presentation I already gave. I did talk a little bit about the blueprint for public health excellence recommendations, the report that came out of the special commission, which I talked about before with the board. And Ed and I updated the select board on some of the recommendations to that. And then, so just listing some of the recommendations, which would be to strengthen collaboration, acquire, store, and use data to improve population health, make training available and accessible, and then commit Commonwealth resources for local public health. So those are the recommendations. That's what the grant and the agreement is doing. One of the things to highlight, I guess, with the agreement is that it requires there to be an advisory board of the agreement itself, that Lexington has it now, and they're in the process of getting it signed, and then it'll come back to us and then go to Wilmington. But the advisory board will consist of myself and the directors from both Wilmington and Lexington and our shared services coordinator to talk about, the capacity assessment, which we're going to be having a meeting on soon. This is with PH, and they're going to tell us, this is where we think you should focus. We're going to say, okay, we agree or not agree, and we can focus wherever we want, basically, but they're going to provide us with some feedback. And then, so this advisory board has to meet at least quarterly, so I can update them on where we are with the finances and, what we're spending the money on and everything. So we did get a great response, and I'll talk about it here rather than in my report, but we got a great response from the ads that we put out. So we put out an ad for a community health worker, a health inspector, an epidemiologist, and a nurse. We did have two on the nurse, a ton on the epidemiologist. So we're preparing to have interviews with myself and the other two public health directors for each one of these positions, and bring in these part-time people for the shared services. So I'm excited about that we got such a great response. I really wasn't expecting it, so it was a pleasant surprise that we actually got so many back.
That is exciting.
And it's good candidates too, I think, so we'll see. We're going to do the interviews at the end of March. So that's what the advisory board, and then once we get the people hired, discussions with the advisory board on exactly what they're going to be working on. They're going to be in Burlington in our shared services office, which is still being worked on.
Work in progress.
But once we get that up and running, that's a place for them to be, and where I can supervise them and, see what they're doing and assign them work based on what comes out of the advisory board. So, excited about that.
Two issues. First, to update the board, there was a large storage room in the Board of Health, right next to the Board of Health, and I petitioned Mr. Sagarino, and he agreed to ask the senior center to vacate. And they are vacating it. There's a lot of old furniture in there and old equipment that we're going to have a dumpster put out front. They're going to dump it all. But I'd like to get a vote to move forward with the intermunicipal agreement, just to make sure that we have that, as well as to appoint you the program manager, because this is work above and beyond the Director of Public Health, and I would like to have the board approve that formally, because that may have some other implications. So I would like a motion, please, for the Board of Health to move forward with the intermunicipal agreement and direct, I guess it's the chairman to make the signature, to sign the agreement. This was the same motion that the selectmen made.
And to appoint Susan Luminello as...
I was going to do that separately.
You want to do it separately?
Yes.
You want to do it separately?
Yes, separately, please.
Okay, so I'll move affirmatively in your motion.
And is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mary Beth. All in favor? Aye. That's 500. And now I would like to, a motion to appoint Susan Luminello, our Director of Public Health, as the program manager for the grant. And this grant may go 15 years.
So you're going to be there for 15 years?
Is that, I was gonna say, is that something you want?
Just delayed your retirement.
I'll make a motion to appoint Susan Luminello as the program manager.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
It's Gail Demore, all in favor?
Aye.
Good, we're done with that. We are formally done with that. I wanted to make sure that we did it, the selectmen just did it. Any other questions on that?
Susan, if I have a recommendation for one of the programs, can I talk to you about it?
Under the grant?
Yeah.
Sure,
Okay.
Good.
that'd be great.
All right.
For ideas.
Staff reports. Environmental engineer.
Good evening
Ms.
again. Just a quick update. Mike and I spent the month of February reviewing and issuing biological safety permits for, I think, 10 facilities. Protogene was one of them, so they were the last one that will get their permit, but everybody else has been re-permitted.
How did those go with those?
They take a long time. Well, you can see what we put in the board books, and we get that times 10. But it was the first time that we had done them.
Go around, yeah.
Well, the first time we had done them in the online permitting software,
Right.
so that was new. I mean, the Viewpoint is not new to us because we use it for building permits and planning reviews, but it was new for the biological safety permitting. But, yeah, time-consuming, but done, thankfully.
Christine, the investigations, is that the two?
I know that we're airing their-
Residential drainage?
Again.
Is there a new problem, or?
Same old problem. I spoke to the director and the chairman about my findings on that, and I went out a couple of times to look at what was going on. And in fact, there was quite a bit of water and ice and snow, but my conclusion was that it was not circumstances under which you could do a assessment of the system that was put in at 241 Fox Hill Road, because A, the ground was frozen quite deep, B, we had snow cover, and C, we had 3+ inches of precipitation in less than a week. So it was, conditions under which it would not succeed. It's frozen it's like, a frozen layer on top of a sponge, and the sponge was already full. So there's nothing's going to get in.
So is the complaint, so I'm trying to get the house numbers straight. So 241 is the one on the corner that put the fence up,
Right.
and 243 is saying they're still having water issues?
I think 241 is the red, the one on the corner is 243, and then
Right, the complaint was against 243.
Oh, okay. So 243 is the Negrones?
Negrons, yep.
Okay.
And there was a complaint from the neighbor on Sumner and the neighbor on
And they're saying
Fox Hill.
that the system they put in place didn't fix the problem?
Did not fix the problem, correct.
Gotcha, okay.
And
So it's going to be back in the springtime, I'm assuming?
I said, here's my finding. It was, I presented it to the director and to the chairman, and, I told them that these weren't conditions under which the system could be effectively evaluated. So it'll probably happen again this winter. We're going to get another snowstorm over the weekend, who knows? We've had a lot, we'll see, but it's, we'll see if we have a wet spring, then that's when it should be evaluated.
Okay. Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the environmental engineer's report, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mary Beth, second by
Andrew.
Andrea. So, it's a long night. Andrea, all in favor? All right.
Aye.
We'll bring this now to Director of Public Health. Now, we have the Associate Director's report, the Health Agent's report, and the Associate Health Inspector. So what I thought we would do is go through the Associate Health Inspector's report, Health Director, Associate Health Director's. If there's any questions concerning his report? Michael Green is on vacation this week. How is the health fair coming?
We've gotten a few applications. We're going to start looking at that within the next week or so, when the deadline kind of comes up, and trying to place people where they need to go. We did decide on the high school, which I think is going to be, logistically, I think it's going to work a lot better. That's where we previously had it. We don't really need to have it outdoors anymore. we had an issue trying to get tables and chairs on the common, so it was just not possible anyways to go on the common, so we went back to the high school, which was a great location and worked really well. And we're going to be able to use the wooden gym and the rubber gym at the same time, so that's the plan now.
And to
that's
remind
May
everybody when-
20th.
May 20th. Okay. And then, any other questions? We'll go to the health agent. The health agent's report. Any questions?
I just have one question. In regards to Marlene's certification, food protection course and exam, how is that the registration going for that?
It was a bit disappointing. So we didn't get many from our food service establishments sign up. And that we had sent out information to them from Code Red. Marlene called a few of them, got very little interest in signing up, which was disappointing because, as you know, they all need the safe certification, and we're providing it to them at a reduced rate. We're only making them pay for the textbook and the exam. So today I completed like a poster type thing that we're going to be putting out to BCAT and the local papers and the Buzz, and also to the chamber, just letting them know that we're having this course. So we're opening it up to everybody now. First, we wanted to prioritize Burlington establishments, but since we don't have the interest there, we're looking broader now. So if there's any member of the public who works in the food service industry, it's really geared for food service managers and supervisors that want to attend, or, it'll go out to the local paper, goes to different cities and towns, so it'll go, maybe there'll be some interest there, so that she actually has enough people to run the class. So we're hoping to fill it up, and that's going to be on March 15th and the 22nd, 2:15 to 6:30, and you must attend both to get the certification and take the exam, and the exam and the textbook are in English only.
Are from the grant, the other towns aware that we're doing this?
So I don't know, that's a good point.
Like, would that be something to open it up to
We could advertise it to them too, yeah.
Start
yeah.
there with the.
We could definitely send it out to them.
Partnering with them anyway.
Yeah, that's good, I didn't think of that.
And
The book?
it is open to members of the Board of Health. So if you'd like to take the course, you can take the course. So if you'd like to sign up for it, please just let Marlene know. And there are openings. One member of the board is going to be taking it, and come join me.
Susan, is there options to get the book and the exam in other languages?
There is, but Marlene is new, this is
Yeah,
her first
exactly,
class.
I see.
She wanted to do it in the English version
No,
first and see how. But yeah, there is a way for her to do
Yes.
that and get translations. Not for the book, but for the exam.
For the exam, yeah.
The lifetime fitness suspension that's coming up, have they addressed it?
They have, yeah, they have, and they've gotten, it's my understanding, that they've gotten quite a few people trained since, told them they had to come to the board meetings. So we're pretty confident that they'll be prepared when they come to the next meeting.
And I was happy to see that cold fries is not considered a health issue. So if you get served lukewarm French fries, it doesn't require a health investigation. I thought that was,
Well, definitely is an unhappy customer, but it is not a health violation.
yes. So, any other questions?
No.
So now let's go to the Associate Health Inspector, Samantha Hardy. Do we have any questions about that? Seeing none? We now go to the Director of Public Health.
Any questions or?
I noticed you put in there the year-over-year case count. I think it was part of the other, what I call it case count,
Oh,
the
for the annual
inspections.
report?
Is that part of the annual report?
Yeah.
And the workload has significantly increased, just based on that count, and that doesn't even identify the workload that you do day to day without doing the, and I call them inspections, but it's probably more than that.
Yeah.
So, and I say this every once in a while, kudos to you. And just this meeting alone, right? Everything that you've worked on, the presentations going in front of the select board and the grant, and just kudos to the entire staff. You guys are doing a great job. We only see, well, Ed probably sees a lot more than us, but we only see, bits and pieces either through subcommittee and then at board meetings, but you guys work hard year in and year out, and kudos to managing the really tidal wave of work that comes our way. And it goes hand in hand and kind of proves the point of adding Mike, a year and a half ago, I guess it was, and the work that we did to say that we needed to hire that position up, and it proves that we did. So thanks, appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have a very hardworking staff, and then also to that, I think if we didn't, we weren't able to add that position, I don't think I would have the time to be spending on
Probably
applying
wouldn't have
for
got the grant,
grants.
really, right?
Yeah, I applied for, I'm going to be applying for another one for tobacco compliance, and that's under the umbrella of the Public Health Excellence Group, or the Tri-Town Coalition, which DPH is prioritizing coalitions for these grants.
Great.
So this grant is for getting someone to come in and do the tobacco compliance inspections on a regular basis, and they'll be doing it for all 3 communities, and she can also do regular tobacco inspections, she can do education, a tobacco type outreach, and I'm trying to tie that whole thing, that whole grant in with the Public Health Excellence Grant, and that would be really nice to collect some data on the tobacco compliance.
Now, how much, I
Right.
signed for that tonight, correct?
Yes. Oh, yeah, so this
How
is
much
gonna
is that
go,
for?
with I haven't put the application in yet, but it's due the 13th. Working on it this week. This is gonna go with the application. And so with this, it's gonna be for the inspector, the youth buyers, some educational materials and some supplies. I think I put in around 48,000, something like that for that. And then I believe it's I think that's a 3-year grant, so additional 48,000 for 3 years for
That will make the grant, the total grant for the 3 towns of Tri-Town, close to $1 million. So
It's very significant.
significant. You met with Brian White. Just let everyone know who Brian White is.
the new superintendent of public works.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
He's working with us on the room and getting that set up. We need new electrical switch, something that's hopefully coming in mid-March. And we need the electrician to put that in so that we can set up all the computers and the phones.
Susan, how, or did HR start the references check
They did,
for the
but they haven't
supervisory
finished.
nurse?
Yeah, when I
Okay.
contacted her today, she
Great.
said they're still working on it.
Perfect, great.
thank you so much. She and Susan have led the interviews for the supervisory nurse, and Mary Beth has been there leading that. And, well, could I have a motion now to approve the Director of Public Health staff report, which includes the Associate Director, the Health Agent, and the Associate Health Inspector?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
500.
Yes.
So, brings us to the end, and we're gonna have to go up and scrape our cars. And is there anything else anyone would like to say or bring up, or? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So, motion to
Second.
adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
We haven't done this, now that we adjourned, we used to do this in the old days, called press time.